Chris, after the events of last night, I got to ask you, you still got something in the tank for us here on Southern Fried Sports?
I got to tell you, man. For about the last month, I've been going on fumes. I've had it not as severe as a lot of people, but some of the travel combined with just the weather and all the other stuff, been going on fumes. But as my dad's always told me, doing what I do sure as heck beats working for a living. So I'm hanging in there.
I can relate to that in a lot of different ways, my friend. I kind of refer to it now as the college football playoff crud. Seems like everybody has contracted some version of it, but you're right. We can manage, I think. I think we can manage just fine.
It's been a good problem to have, but 2 consecutive Monday nights with no sleep rolling into Tuesday basketball games will catch up to you at my age a little bit.
I hear you. Let's talk about last night. Huge on so many levels, right? I mean, because you go into the game as a slight underdog to begin with, and then just before game time, you learn that Colin Sexton, your star point guard, isn't going to be available for the game. You've already had to deal with numerous injuries throughout this season. Who knows? Maybe it's getting to the point where this team is becoming so resilient it doesn't impact them. But all those things coming together, Chris, kind of put into perspective what this team was able to accomplish last night in terms of showing some toughness. And I guess as a part of that, the maturity that maybe we've been waiting to see on a couple of different levels.
Yeah, I would agree. And I was asked a question earlier today is, was Alabama a better team without Colin Sexton? And I said, very quickly, no, that's not the case. But they handled not having him very, very well in a one-game situation. And I think part of what helped prepare them for last night, frankly, was that the last 2 ball games they won, and Colin really wasn't at his best. I mean, he's had, I think, 12 turnovers in his last 2 games combined, which is not characteristic of him, and that won't stay that way. I think the fact that he was hurt, could be an example or a little better understanding as to why he did turn it over as much as he did in the previous game. But still, to all the points you made, to know that you don't have not only your top scorer, but one of the best in the conference, your top assist man, it's a team that's going to put pressure on you with their defense. You don't have your top ball handler available to you, and yet they just went ahead and took care of business. They weren't great in the first half. They turned it over too many times, but they didn't panic. They continued to play really good defense. They handled it better. They shot it extremely well, and certainly John Petty is the one that stands out in that regard. But when the slides started a little bit and more fairly Auburn started to make their run, Alabama didn't let the wheels come off. They stepped it back up at the free throw line after a couple of tough trips there. And I will say this about them, Travis. I don't know what the remainder of this schedule in the league is going to entail, but I do know that if they're able to weather the storm that has been this season, okay, with basically somebody unavailable since day one, if they can weather all of this, find a way to get healthy and everything finally steer the right direction to do enough to get to March and the postseason, they are going to be one heck of a tough out by the time they get to the tournament, because they will have had to play and win so many different ways, building an incredible amount of depth, even though, again, it's not what it was because of the different injuries that have occurred. But I think I was excited coming into this season, and while there have been a couple of hiccups nobody really anticipated in terms of the wins and losses, I'm still very excited about what this season could hold for this basketball team. I think they still have a chance to get accomplished all of the things that people had forecast coming into this year.
Chris, we all knew about Colin coming in. You couldn't not know about Colin coming into the situation here at Alabama, and also John Petty. I mean, very highly regarded recruit in his own right, but sort of the quote unquote others in this freshman class. Herbert Jones, Galen Smith, Alex Reese. Those three guys, in terms of their contribution to this club to this point, is it well beyond what maybe even you expected? It is for me, especially for the young post.
Yeah.
Talk about what they've been able to do this early on in their careers as kind of guys that were, just not really given much of a thought to in terms of contribution this year.
No, I think you're right. In the case of Herb, you've been hearing from the coaches, their conversation has been from day one. This is the steal of the class, as highly regarded and deservedly so as Petty and Sexton were. Herbert is the guy that has a chance to be the real nice surprise in this mix. And clearly he's done that with what he's done on the defensive end. I thought the poise and the confidence that he showed offensively, though, last night was huge, especially early in the second half. And I thought it was a potentially devastating loss when he picked up that fifth foul with under a minute to go, to not have him available. But again, Bama able to overcome that and get the job done. Galen Smith is further ahead, I think, in terms of his skill set than I anticipated coming in, but that was with my limited knowledge. Alex Reese, I think, is a guy who took some criticism in his senior year because he had some down moments, and there was the narrative out there that he didn't play all that hard, and I didn't think that was fair because I knew he was banged up a good bit of that senior season, and wasn't at 100%. And now that he's learned to play and put in some quality time, you're seeing that he brings a different dimension to be able to stretch the floor and shoot the ball from the perimeter the way that he does, and he's learning how to play every night, and he's healthy, and that's been huge. I think the thing about the class as a whole, and you put them all in there, Travis, the thing that was so exciting is that you had somebody that brought something different. Every spot different, and yet it was everything they brought was something that Alabama needed. And I think the diversity, in addition to the talent level, is what made this recruiting class so special, and it's why it's going to have a chance. This group is going to have a chance to do great things, not just this year, but throughout their career. And I will say this, too, and you know this because you followed it as closely as anybody over the years. And I told Avery Johnson this before the season got started. What's going to help not only this team, but Alex and Galen, you know this as well as anybody, in years past, those two guys, and I'll put Herb Jones in the mix too, in years past, those three guys would have had to come out, start, and play 30 minutes a game from day one. That's what they would have been. That's the situation that in most years, certainly over the last decade, they would have been put into, which is very, very tough to get thrown to the wolves, so to speak, that much. These guys they've played big moments in big games, and they've made big contributions, but they haven't had to do it for 30 minutes at a time, night in and night out. And I think the fact that they've been able to develop at a better pace, that they've responded when they have gotten their chances, I think that's not just big for them well down the line when it comes to their careers at Alabama.
And I guess that kind of goes hand in hand, Chris, with Dante Hall unexpectedly being able to give them 15 minutes last night with the wrist injury and the expectation going into it that we weren't going to see Dante Hall at all. Just his presence in the game and maybe what you think it meant to Alabama last night. You look at the stat line. I mean, it doesn't blow you away. 5 rebounds and in a bucket, I guess. But just being able to have him in there and maybe the comfort level, it still helped provide to a group missing a guy like Colin Sexton.
Travis, he may have had the biggest rebound of the game last night. Was it not a 2-point game with about 45 seconds to go, and Auburn, maybe it was a 3-point game. They hit one free throw, and they've got another one, and they miss it, and it looks like Auburn's going to get it, and he just kind of reaches back and snatched the rebound out of the air, and I think, I may be wrong, but that may have been the trip where Herb got the and one, or had the chance for it, and it made it a 4-point game again, something like that. They start to run together a little bit, but it was a huge board at a huge time, and I totally agree. Just the leadership, the toughness. Now, again, this was, it was downplayed as a medical procedure. The guy had surgery, had a pin put in, okay? Less than a week ago in his shooting hand. And to not just be able to, but to want to be out there and to play in that moment and to be a factor. I thought it was big from a personnel standpoint, but the leadership part of it and the emotional lift it gave the players, but also the crowd, which in turn gives back more to the players, can't be overstated. I thought it was huge that he was able to play. Would have been even if Colin had been able to go, but I think to somewhat offset his absence emotionally was awfully big for this team last night.
Chris, what is it about John Petty and these in-state ag schools? He seems to like to shoot the three against them.
I was giving him not a hard time, but I was saying, all right, that's what, 57 combined points?
Yeah.
He has shot it. He shot it awfully well against the in-state teams. And here's the thing. John is as good a shooter as you'll find. He matched what had been the school record and would have done it again if he hadn't already broken it himself with 10 in that A&M ball game. So when he's on, it's scary, and he's almost in a zone unlike anything we've seen. When he further learns, and I think he's getting that, but when he further learns that Alabama can win without him making 8 threes, but they can't win with him getting 0 rebounds, he's going to be an even more dangerous weapon for Alabama because he's so athletic. He's such a tough matchup. He's going to get better in terms of handling the basketball. That is going to get better. But if he can grab just 2 or 3 boards a game on top of the problems that he causes a scouting report because of having to defend him, even on nights when he's not as hot, they've still got to guard him because they know he can heat up at any moment. So they've got to respect him there. It spreads the floor, but if he can give Alabama just a little something on the glass and continue to improve defensively, he's going to be an incredibly special player.
We talk about all these guys, Chris, and kind of the glue to everything in these last 2 wins has been Dazon Ingram. Right. I mean, Dazon's going to turn it over a little bit. I mean, that's going to be part and parcel with what you get from him, but he's able to check so many other boxes, and if he's going to score and get to the free throw line specifically like he has of late, those are trades you're willing to make.
I agree. His natural position, his skill set's better suited to the 3, and thankfully they've been able to play him there this year. But he is such a tough matchup, drawing normally a smaller guard when he handles it at the point, that when he can get himself to the free throw line, and now he's making those at a high clip. I know last night wasn't his best night, but he's shooting better than 70% now from the stripe, which is just fantastic for him and for this team. I thought he saved the game against Memphis in the opener. He has been a calming presence. Look, I don't know. His absence didn't cost Alabama, or his absence wasn't the reason that Alabama lost to Georgia, but I don't think Alabama loses by 20 if he's there, because I don't think things would have gotten out of hand in the first half if he had been himself and been able to play in that ball game. It is really nice to see him become a true leader and a calming presence on this basketball team, and just a tough matchup that is another prime example of why this team is going to be one of the contenders for the league crown as we go on through the year.
Yeah, tough in every sense of the word, too. When you talk intangibles and in the way that he approaches the game, you're right. His presence when he isn't in there, pretty noticeable from that standpoint. Well, Chris, as we let you go, I got to ask you about the national championship game against Georgia. I need to know what your perspective, your vantage point was, especially for that final play, and what you'll always take away from that incredible moment involving Tua Tagovailoa, Devontae Smith, and that Alabama football team.
Travis, I can't tell you specifically, but I think I was somewhere around the 25-yard line as that was going on. And when Tua got sacked, there were about three different thoughts that were simultaneously going through my head. That's an example of why Coach Saban was reluctant perhaps to make a change, because Jalen doesn't take a sack like that. Then also going through my mind is, I can't believe that Alabama's going to lose, come this close and lose again in consecutive years. And it's also going through my head, poor Andy Pappanastis. What could be for him for the rest of his life as the guy that rightly or wrongly will be remembered for that moment, in that moment alone. And about the time those three thoughts are going through my head, all of a sudden I realize, holy fill in the blank, we just won. And the next thing I know is I'm out in the middle of the field jumping up and down like an idiot like everybody else, and realize, okay, time to go to work. Got to get a couple of interviews here. But it literally went that fast that I'm thinking, this is really sad that this has played out this way, but oh my gosh, none of that matters. We just won. It was something I'll never forget.
Chris, have you worked a college football game sideline as crowded as the ones at the national championship games, or is it just me? It seems like there's more people on the field than in the press box at these college football national championship, college football playoff national. Everybody's on the sideline.
And it was like that before they allow the media to come down to the field. It was already.
That's what I mean.
Like that, yeah. It was already like that before they had the actual media down there. And part of it from Alabama's perspective, and it's a great thing, and I'm so thankful that Coach Saban's created the environment that he has, where these former players, whether they played for him or not, but it's certainly understandable, but the ones that have been there in the last decade would want to be back and be on that sideline again and be there with that Alabama team. So you have greater volume there. And then, the college football playoff people have their sponsors or whoever else those people are. But you're right. It's pretty congested. But that just means it's an important game. There, you don't have to worry about crowd control at games that don't mean anything. And so that was, that's again, it's like we were talking at the start of this about lack of sleep because of games on Monday night leading into basketball on Tuesday. Those are really, really, really good problems to have.
They are, but I'm just looking out for my favorite sideline guy. That's all I'm doing. Trying to make sure you've got the access you need.
Look, at my height, everything is everything's a bad view anyway. So I'm just glad to be there. I'm not going to get too worried about it, but I do appreciate you looking out for me.
Well, I can relate with that, certainly, and that's another reason for my concern. I can relate for sure. Well, Chris, as always,
I'm glad they've taken the crown out of football fields, because now I can see from one side to the other. That's a good thing.